fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo Silver, the Lone Ranger. Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early western United States. Nowhere in the pages of history can one find a greater champion of justice. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. From out of the past come the thundering hoofbeats of the great horse Silver. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Come on, Silver. Let's go, big fellow. Hail, Silver! Away!
From the high ridge to the north, the Lone Ranger and Tonto saw the rider heading across the Badlands. The masked man focused his field glasses and...
Tonto, is Jed Leach. Kimasabi. He escaped from Kansas Penitentiary 6 months ago. Now he's heading for the border. We must stop him. Come on, Silver!
Let's scout!
It was not until half an hour later that Leach realized he was being followed. He looked back from the top of the long rise, saw the Lone Ranger and Tonto, and though he was too far away to make out their faces, he recognized Silver and Scout. He spurred the gray he was riding over the top of the rise and down the rocky trail. The pursuit continued. As Leach neared Castle Butte, the Lone Ranger and Tonto were less than a quarter of a mile behind. The masked man fired 3 warning shots. At the sound of the shots, Leach's gray swerved to one side. Leach fought to control him, but the horse took the bit in his teeth and broke away from the trail, heading straight for a deep gully. Leach saw at the reins. There was no stopping the gray, though, and it seemed he meant to jump the gully. Leach was certain it couldn't be cleared, and he considered taking a fall that might easily break his neck. Then hoofbeats thundered behind him. Silver ranged along one side of the gray, Scout on the other. Tonto used Scout's superior weight to turn the gray away from the gully. The Lone Ranger reached out and grabbed the bridle of the runaway.
Oh, now. Oh, easy, steady.
The company of Silver and Scout and the Lone Ranger's voice calmed the gray. He slackened his pace and finally allowed himself to be brought to a halt.
Easy, steady, Silver.
Thanks, mister. You saved my life.
Get his gun, Tonto.
Here it is, and I'll not make any trouble.
What happened to your horse?
He must be gun-shy.
Strange thing for a horse wearing an army brand to be gun-shy.
All I know is that when you fired, he took the bit in his teeth and headed for the gully.
Where did you steal the horse, Leach?
I didn't steal him. He was given to me.
That's a likely story.
It's true.
Well, it's a long way back to Kansas. We'll make camp here and give our horses a rest. We give you a chance to tell us where you've been and what you've been doing since you broke out of jail.
Sure. I'll tell you everything.
Camp was made and Tonto cooked a meal. As the men ate, Leach told his story.
I kept traveling after I left Kansas until I reached Hill County, north of the Ridge, about 4 months ago. I settled down there in Hill City, called myself Amos Jones, and did odd jobs around town. Then a new tax collector arrived. That was 3 months ago. He gave me a steady job, and I've been working in the land office ever since.
Doing what?
Paperwork, mostly.
Oh?
I served notices on ranchers who were behind in their taxes. Did some collecting.
And pocketed the money, I suppose.
Not a penny. I turned it all over to the tax collector.
Why did you leave Hill City?
Last night, Thompson warned me I'd better.
Who's Thompson?
The tax collector.
See?
He said he had an idea my real name was Leach and that I was wanted in Kansas. I denied it at first, but then I admitted it.
Oh?
Thompson said he only wanted to do me a good turn, that he'd seen a circular in the sheriff's office describing me. He told me I'd better get out of town.
A government official discovered who you were and didn't turn you over to the law?
That's right. And my horse was lame, so he let me take this gray.
I'm wondering if the land office is missing any money.
You've searched me. $10, that's all I have.
You could have stolen money and hidden it somewhere.
I swear I didn't.
Considering your record, it's hard to believe you.
Mister, that bank robbery was my first and only mistake. And I mean to go straight from now on. I'll never break another law.
You broke jail 6 months ago.
Because I felt my sentence was unfair. And after I'd served 5 years and had an opportunity to escape, I decided to take advantage of it. To go far away and start a new life.
To get back to the tax collector, hard to believe he'd help an escaped convict make his getaway.
All right. Take me back to Hill City and turn me over to the sheriff. You'll find out I'm telling the truth.
I don't happen to know the sheriff, but we are riding back to Hill City.
Doesn't make any difference to me.
Tonto will ride into town and find out if any money has been stolen.
You'll find out I'm telling the truth.
The Lone Ranger, Tonto, and Leach made their camp in a ravine not far from Hill City that night. And the following morning, Tonto rode into town, while the Lone Ranger stayed behind to guard the prisoner. Tonto dismounted in front of the post office, tied Scout to the hitch rack, and walked down the street half a block to the land office. One of the windows was open, and Tonto stopped at it to take a look inside. The man behind the counter, dark and sharp-featured, wore a black broadcloth coat and a flowered vest. 2 ranchers faced him.
I want a straight answer, Thompson. What's the meaning of this notice I found in my mailbox this morning?
I want to know the same thing. I got one, too.
Well, Matt, Bill, the notices are clear enough. You're 3 years behind on your taxes. If you don't take care of at least one of those years by the first of the month, your ranches will be sold at auction.
I'm not any 3 years behind.
Neither am I.
According to my record, you are.
What about the $800 I paid your man Jones last week?
And what about the $500 I gave him?
You men have any receipts?
Yes, right here.
Yeah,
take a look at it. Here's mine, signed by Amos Jones.
Man, I'm sorry to say the money was never turned into this office.
Why, sir?
Jones had no authority to collect money, and no authority to sign a receipt for it in the name of the United States government.
Well, he did it.
It's regrettable. He must have simply pocketed the money.
Where is he?
He's gone.
Oh!
He left here early yesterday morning, and he took my horse.
Well, is the sheriff on his trail?
No, I didn't say anything to the sheriff about Jones leaving.
Why not, if he stole your horse?
Well, he left his chestnut mare behind. She's a little lame right now, but she's better than my gray. I had no idea he'd stolen money from you.
That dirty crook. There's no way I can raise any more money. I stand a good chance of losing my range.
Same here. Well, there's no sense in talking about it. If your money's to be recovered, Jones must be found. I'll go to the sheriff's with you.
All right, come on.
Tonto watched the men storm out of the office, but instead of following them to the sheriff's, he returned to Scout, mounted, and rode out of town. At the Lone Ranger's camp, he told the masked man everything he had heard. When he had finished, the Lone Ranger turned to Leach.
Well, Jed?
It's a pack of lies.
Do you know the ranchers who were talking with the tax collector?
Sure, Matt Carter and Bill Hudson.
Did you get any money from them?
Of course I did. $800 from Matt and $500 from Bill. Thompson told me to get as much money as I could from them.
Where is it now?
I gave it to Thompson.
He says you didn't.
He's lying.
It's your word against his. He's a government official and
I'm a convicted bank robber.
Right.
All right, go ahead and believe him if you want to, but I say he's... Yeah, that's it. He took the money for himself and then got rid of me by telling me the law was on my trail. Maybe he knew who I was from the moment he hired me. Figured he could use me and get rid of me whenever he wanted to. That's what he did. I may have been a thief, but Thompson is one.
It's an interesting accusation.
Kimasabi.
Yes, Tonto.
Me see this fellow Thompson before. In Dodge City. Dodge City? That's where I was caught. He must have known who I was all along.
Just a moment, Leach. What was he doing in Dodge, Tonto? Working in the land office?
No. In deal faro and cafe.
You said that he came to Hill City 3 months ago, Leach.
That's right. The land office was shut up when I got there. The old tax collector had died. Thompson was sent from Washington to take his place.
Was it during our last day in Dodge that you saw him dealing faro, Tonto? That was shortly after you broke out of jail, Leach, less than 6 months ago. I take it that Thompson was expected in Hill City when he arrived there.
Yeah, the sheriff had a wire from Washington saying he was coming.
And he had identification papers?
Sure, the United States seal and everything. He showed them to me once.
An unusual thing for the government to pick its agents out of gambling dens.
Me sure this same man.
What was his name, Thompson?
Me not know. Me not hear name. Oh. Hey, now I get it. A crook. A dirty crook. A killer, maybe. He dry gulches Thompson on his way here and takes his papers. Then he sets himself up as the tax collector.
Was he riding that gray when he arrived in Hill City?
Huh? Yeah, that's right.
I'm still wondering about an army horse being gun-shy, Tonto.
Him no good for army. If him afraid of guns.
Let's try an experiment.
The Lone Ranger dropped a loop around the gray's neck and then took out his 6-gun. He fired 3 times. The horse tossed his head, but otherwise the shots didn't seem to bother him at all. The Lone Ranger freed his loop, and the horse returned to his grazing.
Now, what do you make of that?
He isn't gun-shy.
He was out there in the Badlands. He went berserk when you fired.
He had some other reason for running away. It happened near Castle Butte, didn't it?
Yeah.
You were heading straight for the Butte, as I remember.
The trail skirts the base. Here, gray fella, here. I'll remember you.
What is it, Tonto?
You look.
Yeah?
Bullet scar on neck. Him wounded not long ago. Him not like anybody touched.
I see. And the scar could be about 3 months old.
That's what Tonto think.
He could have been wounded near Castle Butte on the way to Hill City. That would explain his actions. It's something that should be investigated.
You ride back there?
Yes, Tonto. I'll lead the gray. You stay here and guard our prisoner. I'd advise you not to try to get away, Leach. Give us your cooperation, and we may be able to help you with the prison officials when you get back to Kansas.
I'll not try anything. That's a promise.
I'll be riding on to Fort McKinley from the Butte, Tonto.
You'll not be back for 2-3 days.
At least. But I should have the answer to all our questions when I return. Here's a look.
After listening to Thompson and the ranchers, the sheriff had decided there was no chance of overtaking Leach. An hour later, Matt Carter, who had started for his ranch, came racing back into town.
Whoa.
He drew rein in front of the sheriff's office and called out to Bill Hudson, Thompson, and some other men who were talking in front of the Last Chance Cafe.
Bill! Yeah! All of you, come over here. I found him. Leach, Jones, whatever his name is, yes. Come on inside while I tell the sheriff.
Are you sure? It doesn't seem reasonable for him to stay around here.
I saw him. Sheriff, Maxine Leach. That right, Matt? Yeah. I'll tell you just how it happened. I took the Pine Ridge Trail, and I happened to look down and saw a masked man riding out of that wooded ravine to the east of the ridge.
Leach?
No. This was a big hombre on a white stallion. But he was leading another horse. It was the gray with the Army brand Leach stole from you, Thompson.
My horse?
Where was now, wait a minute, let me talk. The masked man was heading south and traveling like the wind. I knew there was no chance of overtaking him, but I decided to take a look at the ravine. And Leach is there.
Go on.
He and an Injun are camped at the bottom of the ravine.
Let's get after him, man.
Come on.
The curtain falls on the first act of our Lone Ranger adventure. Before the next exciting scenes, please permit us to pause for just a few moments. Castle Butte, its base wreathed in mist and its pinnacles shining in the moonlight, seemed an enchanted place, a castle resting on the clouds. But the Army gray the Lone Ranger was leading wanted no part of it.
Come on, boy. Silver isn't afraid. No reason why you should be.
At last, however, he allowed himself to be led toward the butte. The trail passed close to the base of the great stone pile, and at a point where a rocky ledge jutted out over the trail, the gray reared once more.
Oh, easy, steady, Silver.
The Lone Ranger dismounted, and keeping a firm hold on the lead rope, patted the gray's neck and managed to calm him down.
Easy, boy, easy. I understand. The last time you passed this way, there was someone up on that ledge who shot you in the shoulder. There's no one here tonight. Come on, there's nothing to be afraid of now. Come on, boy, come on.
The Lone Ranger led the gray close to the butte. He stood there trembling. And then the masked man noticed it was not the ledge above him that seemed to bother the horse most, but a pile of rocks at the base of the butte.
You're still frightened. It could be something under those rocks that's making you afraid. Act as if you'd caught the scent of death. Come on, boy. Come on.
The Lone Ranger led the gray away from the butte and tied the lead rope to Silver's saddle. Then he returned to the rocks. He tossed them aside one by one. He saw the toe of a riding boot, and when all the rocks had been cleared away, there was the body of a dead man. The pockets of his breeches and his jacket were turned inside out.
Murdered and robbed. Could this be John Thompson?
At 10 o'clock in the evening, 3 days later, the tax collector was pacing the floor of the land office. Someone knocked at the door.
Who's there?
The tax collector unlocked the door.
Come in. You're ahead of time.
Less than a week for the first.
I know.
Better to be ahead of time than late. You still want me to bid in those ranches for you, don't you?
Yes, have a seat.
Something going wrong? Carter and Hudson haven't raised the money to pay their taxes, have they?
No, it isn't that.
What's happened? According to your letter, it sounded like the slickest scheme I ever heard.
Leach didn't head for the border. He stuck around here. Sheriff picked him up. He's in jail now.
He's told everyone he gave the money he collected from Carter and Hudson to you.
Yes, but no one believes him.
Well, what are you worried about?
I'm not sure. His trial comes up tomorrow.
It'll be your word against his. The jury will believe you.
I'm afraid Leach has something up his sleeve, the way he looks at me and smiles. I'm afraid he may be on to the game.
How could he be?
There's an Indian who was captured with him. There's something familiar about that Indian. I know I've seen him someplace before.
If he's recognized you as Andy Blair...
That's just what I mean. If Leach would get up in front of the judge and make an accusation like that, the sheriff would investigate, and I'd be sunk. I've been trying to think of some way to keep Leach from coming to trial.
Go to the jail and put a bullet through him.
Oh, yes, I've considered that, but there are no outside windows to the cells. I'd have to get past the deputy on guard, and I couldn't do that without being recognized. I'd have to shoot him, too. The shots would bring the men from the cafes, and... No, that's impossible.
Yeah, you'll have to take your chances, then.
I have another idea that might work.
Now, what? Bill Hudson was all in favor of a lynching when we caught Leach and the Indian.
Uh-huh. Only one deputy on duty at the jail, huh?
That's all. I might be able to persuade the ranchers Leach will talk with a rope around his neck. Once it's there, I'll see he hangs.
That would solve everything, Andy.
Yeah. It's worth a try.
After finding the grave at Castle Butte, the Lone Ranger had ridden on across the Badlands to Fort McKinley. There he was fortunate Jim Wilson was at the outpost, and no better ally could have been found, for Jim was both an old friend and the United States Marshal. On the way back to Hill City, they stopped at Castle Butte. And it was just at midnight, 2 hours after the tax collector had received his visit from Moran, that the masked man and the marshal rode up the ravine outside of town. They drew rein at the campsite where the Lone Ranger had left Tonto and Leach.
Steady, big fella. This is where we were camped.
He promised to wait for you here?
Yes, perhaps they're farther up the canyon. Steady, Silver.
That shot was a warning. Reach for the sky or I'll shoot to kill. Sounds like the sheriff. We'd better do as he says.
I agree.
Come and get it, Sheriff. Get it. Leaping catfish men. This is Jim Wilson. He's the United States Marshal. Well, I'm glad you remember me, Sheriff. This masked man must be your prisoner. No. He's my friend. Friend? He's a known outlaw. He's in cahoots with an escaped convict called Jed Leach. Where is Leach? We captured him 3 days ago. He's in jail. And the Indian who was with him? He's in jail, too. I intend to take Leach back to Kansas. He has to answer a charge here first. He stole the money Matt Carter and Bill Hudson gave him for their taxes. I don't believe Leach is guilty of that charge. Well, he's to be tried tomorrow. We'll see what a jury thinks. I doubt if you'll bring him to trial after you hear what we have to say. What's that? The man who's been posing as John Thompson is an imposter. Huh? John Thompson is dead, buried under a pile of rocks at the foot of Castle Butte. Oh, man, that can't be. It is true. I knew John well, and I was able to identify the body. But the man who's been running the land office for the last 3 months, he had credentials. John's credentials. Describe the man you know as Thompson, Sheriff. Dark hair, dark complexion, 6 feet tall, about 180 pounds. That checks. I suspect he's Andy Blair, a gambler who was run out of George City by cheating. Well, I'll be hornswoggled. To get Thompson's papers, he must have killed him. There's enough evidence to arrest him for murder, that's certain. And if he's a crook and a killer, then maybe Leach was telling the truth about the rancher's money. Shall we go after Blair, Sheriff? Yes, sir. He'll take the Indian's place in prison. Not so fast. If the Indian's one of Leach's cronies... He isn't. He was guarding Leach when you arrested him. Sheriff, his name is Tonto, and this masked man is the Lone Ranger. Leaping catfish. You hear that, man? This is the Lone Ranger. You take the lead, mister. It's an honor to follow you.
Let's go, then. Come on, Silver.
When the Lone Ranger, the Marshal, the Sheriff, and his deputies drew rein in front of the jail, they found the front door open, and inside, the guard lying on the floor, bound and gagged.
Charlie, what happened?
20 men. They were all wearing bandanas over their faces. It was Carter, Hudson, Thompson, and a lot more I recognized. They tied me up and gagged me and took my keys.
What about the prisoners?
Leach and the Indian? The ranchers had ropes. They mean to lynch them. They're hanging Oak to the west of town.
Come on, let's go.
This is your last chance, Leach. Tell us where our money is or you're hanged.
I've told you. In the land office say still lying. Let him swing, boys. Don't! This is murder. You've got to listen to me. That masked man you've been looking for, he's the Lone Ranger. And he promised he'd come back here with proof that I'm innocent. More lies. This Indian is Tonto, the Lone Ranger's friend. Take his word if you think I'm lying.
We'll take neither of your words. You're a couple of renegades. Count to three, Matt. If they don't tell you where the money is by then, let them hang. 1, 2.
Go on.
I think maybe we should wait.
Now, stand aside. Let me do it.
No!
You've had your chance. Now I'll... Oh! Hey, who fired that shot? Thompson's been hit. My arm.
The sheriff and his deputies. They have the masked man with them.
There's the U.S. Marshal, too.
Confronted by the law, the ranchers fell back, and the sheriff took command of the situation. The prisoners were freed, and the lawmen turned on the lynching party.
Ashamed of yourselves now, aren't you? A fine way for respectable citizens to act. Who was responsible? Answer me. And don't imagine those bandanas are hiding your identities. Who was responsible for this outrage, Matt?
Well, we were talking things over in the last chance.
It was Thompson's idea.
Yeah, that's right. He suggested it first. He said Leach would never tell us where our money was hidden unless we used strong measures.
He said put a rope around Leach's neck and he'd talk.
We never meant to hang him, though, Sheriff. Just scared.
I saw what was happening. Both Leach and the Indian would be dead this minute if the masked man hadn't put a bullet through Thompson's arm. How is he?
It's only a flesh wound. Tonto's taking care of it.
Marshal, is he the gambler you spoke of?
Yep. His real name is Andy Blair.
What's he saying?
I'll tell you what he's saying. This man's name is Blair, and he's under arrest for the murder of John Thompson. Well, this man killed Thompson, buried him near Castle Butte, and used Thompson's credentials to take over the land office here.
Well, then maybe Leach has been telling us the truth all along.
I have been. This Blair may not have given you credit for the taxes you paid on his books, but I'll bet you'll find the money in the office safe.
He may have hidden it.
He has a strong box at home. Look there.
That strong box is my personal property.
Oh, the money is there.
We're not going to lose our ranchers, Bill.
It's more than you deserve after the way you've acted tonight.
We never meant to go through with the lynching.
I repeat, if it hadn't been for the masked man...
Hey, where's he gone?
The engine's gone, too.
They had my permission. Their work is done.
The masked man promised to talk to the prison warden about me.
He intends to do just that, Leach. I doubt if you'll have to serve any extra time for breaking jail, and your case will be reviewed.
That's all I ask. I knew he'd keep his promise. Tell these hombres, Marshal. Tell everyone who the masked man is.
Who he is? Well, no one really knows. But he's the man who's responsible for exposing Andy Blair here as a killer. He's the man who's done more for the cause of justice than any law officer in the West. He's the man we call the Lone Ranger.
This is a feature of the Lone Ranger Incorporated, created by George W. Trendle, produced by Trendle Campbell Muir Incorporated, directed by Charles D. Livingston, and edited by Fran Stryker. The part of the Lone Ranger is played by Brace Beamer.